Welcome to Echoes International podcast, with teaching, interviews and stories of what God is doing straight from the mission field and also within the UK. For more podcasts, stories and opportunities to get involved, check out our website at echoesinternational.org.uk and our other social media channels.
John's braver than I am after he opened in prayer, but generally speaking, after a long morning at a conference and a nice lunch and middle of the afternoon, I don't encourage people to bow their head and close their eyes because too many heads don't come back up afterwards. So I'm a little jet lagged, and if I got to stay awake, you do too. Okay? One of the things that was good, I think, about us coming into MSC after being on the field was that prior executive directors, some of you I think know Bill Ewell or know of him. I see a few heads. He was from Hamilton originally, I believe, or maybe Lark Hall, and went to school in Hamilton or something, I don't know. All these names, by the way, I've heard them all my life. Lark Hall, Wisha, Motherwell, Hamilton, all these places. That's right. Sometimes you weren't sure if the preacher was talking about heaven or Lark Hall. And anyway, Bill, wonderful man of God, a wonderful Bible teacher, and been a gift to MSC. Don't mean this in any way as a negative, but having been former workers ourselves, we were 27 years working under MSC before coming in onto this side of the desk. And so that really helped us, I think, express to the board and express the need for some things that we thought could be done that hadn't been done. And MSC at the time was not resourced that well. We didn't have a lot of staff, we didn't have a lot of people. And I had a number of ideas like that I thought we needed to get on with. And so we adopted a slogan of anything worth doing should be done badly. Right? If it's worth doing badly. And the reason we mean that is that if we wait till we could do it really well, if we spent a couple years developing a whole program, we just didn't have the capacity for that. We didn't have the people and the resources, and so we just said, let's just do it, and people will get to see what it looks like. Because when you haven't done something ever before, people just scratch their head, they don't really know what you mean. So if you get on with it and do it, and they see it, and then somebody says, we got to keep this going, or we need more of this, that's when you know it's starting to catch on. So that's the way we proceeded. And we called it worker care. Now, member care as a thing is becoming a thing all around the world. With organizations, with corporations, it's a generic term, member care. We sort of were aware of that, but we just started calling it worker care as a way of taking care of our workers, and started a little department. Again, we just got it running. And the idea there was really to fill in the gaps. Now, this verse comes to mind. I don't believe we have to find a scriptural reference for everything we do, but it's a verse that actually, after we were doing it for a little while, one of our worker care guys said, I was just reading this, and I was thinking, that's what we do at worker care, so we sort of adopted it. As Paul said, I rejoice over the coming of Stephanus and Fortunatus and Archaeus, because they have supplied what was lacking on your part. Now he's probably thinking a little bit about money there, bringing them the funds, etc. But there was this idea of filling in the gaps. And regardless of how great a job a sending local church does of caring for their workers, gaps will still exist in the workers' support due to the nature and unique challenges of cross-cultural life and ministry, which may not be fully understood or fillable by the sending local church. Now, in our paradigm, and I think Echoes would be right in step with this, the sending agency is the assembly. It's the commending local church. They're the ones who send out the worker, just as the church at Antioch sent out Paul and Barnabas. And that's the model that we believe in very strongly. And so as mission service organizations, it's never our role to direct or to supervise, but rather to serve and support. So I do this a lot. I say, if you feel like we're doing this, then we've stepped over a line somewhere. That's the Lord, and the sending assembly does that. We do this. We support you and help you in what you're doing. The assembly and the Lord do this, and together we help support you in the work. And so this was the idea here, because we would say that the elders of the sending local church should do everything elders are taught to do in caring for the well-being of their people, overseeing their ministry, making sure they're walking closely with the Lord, making sure they're not straying into false doctrine. Those are things that elders are equipped to do, and you can do it. And now we can do it so easily. We can call somebody, we can Zoom with them, we can meet with them regularly. Not that a lot of elders do that, but we're encouraging that more and more. And a lot of it is because it's never really occurred to them sometimes that, hey, we could just have our missionary in the elders meeting here tonight for half an hour. We'd be easy. We can just do that, do it on our phone. Even if we didn't set it up, we can just Zoom, get them in there and say, hey, how's it going? We're just praying for you now. Is there anything we need to know? So we try to stimulate elders to do that, and whole churches. There's no reason that any worker can't be on the screen in our meeting some Sunday morning. It's easy. And so that's part of what we were trying to do. But what we realize is that no matter how much local elders can care and do everything they can, there's some gaps there that they don't get and shouldn't have to, frankly. Everything from visa applications to cross-cultural challenges to interpersonal conflict on the field, to all kinds of very mission-specific things that if you haven't lived out there and done that work for a couple years, you don't really get, and you can't really empathize. And very often, elders have very little to say other than, we'll pray for you, brother, which of course is great, but sometimes they're looking to hear a little more than that, or something in addition to that. So we enlisted 3 couples, one of which is Marilyn and I, so I guess we enlisted 2 couples, who had both been on the field for some length of time. Becky and Conrad had themselves been missionaries in Southeast Asia as a couple, and Becky had grown up in Honduras as a MK. Her parents were long-time missionaries down there. And so these were people with missions experience who understood what it's like to live on the field. And we divided up the world. Conrad and Becky took Southeast Asia because they lived there, and Central and Southern America. Ron and Robin Hampton had been missionaries over in Ireland for many years, and they took Europe. And Ron still comes over and runs evangelistic teams in Ireland, and he then uses that as a launch pad to go and visit workers around the European continent. Marilyn and I were in Africa for years, and so we handle Africa and also Middle East because of the sensitive nature of that part of the world. And we've got a couple of others that are on the team that help us in very specific ways, especially Lisa on the right. She's a very, very capable counselor, and she herself was a missionary in Russia back in the days before the Iron Curtain fell, smuggling Bibles and so forth, and working after that in refugee camps in Eastern Europe. And she's great, and she's done quite a bit of training, and she's able to do a very good job of debriefing. And debriefing is something that I've only really fully understood recently. And that is the skill that some people have acquired or have naturally of being able to help workers who have been through any kind of experience actually make sense of what's gone on in the last several years. And so we've been encouraging more and more of our workers that come back to have a debrief session. And it's astounding what comes out. She's done it to me a little bit, and it's not always comfortable, but it's so helpful because there's a lot of low-level trauma that people, I think Rupert's poetry helped us see that was a way of him processing the trauma that he was experiencing and witnessing, as second-hand trauma, real first-hand trauma. And not everything has to be a disorder. I always put that out. We hear a lot about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It doesn't have to be a disorder, it can just be post-traumatic stress. And lots of people have post-traumatic stress that doesn't really develop into a life-dominating disorder, but it's a thing. And when you live in a third world country, especially, you experience a lot of things. My wife, one of her major ministries was in the hospitals with dying kids who had AIDS. And almost every case, the kids' whole family had been wiped out. Parents gone, nobody around. And people in hospital in Zimbabwe nowadays they need a whole family support system, and there was nobody for these kids. They'd be lying there. And heartbreaking stories I don't have time to tell you. And she would pray with these kids and read them Bible stories and just go from bed to bed and minister to them. And, you know, not uncommon for her to be holding a kid's hand when he died, or to have one 10-year-old boy saying, "My biggest fear is that there's nobody to bury me. Will you bury me?" Making Marilyn promise to bury him. Things like that, you know, we learned that, hey, this has a tremendously, you know, compounding effect of experiencing these low-level traumatic experiences. Yeah, no bombs exploded, and yes, nothing at a high level happened, but that accumulates over time. And many of our workers are in very stressful situations. I didn't bring the statistics. In fact, it just occurred to me, which is always dangerous to go off script, which I don't have anyway. But there's a thing called a Holmes-Ray scale that is a one scale of analyzing stress levels. And most people who score 200 end up in hospital within 2 years with major illness, heart attack, etc. And it's been measured that the average cross-cultural worker in their first year on the field consistently scores around 600. It's a very traumatic, stressful thing to go to a foreign culture and to be immersed into, especially if there's a lot of suffering around you, a lot of poverty and things like that. Listen, the average elder can't begin to really effectively help and deal with those things and even be a really effective listening ear, unless they happen to have been in a similar situation. Some will. But we try to fill in those gaps between what is the spiritual authority and spiritual responsibility of the sending local church and what is just mission-specific skills. So the goal of the Worker Care Program is simply to engage mission workers along with their sending local church to enable, encourage, and support them in their work for the Lord. And we really try to be a safe person that understands. They can tell us anything. They can tell us that they have a major conflict with their coworker. They might not feel comfortable telling their elders they're not getting along. They might not be comfortable even telling their family, or they certainly can't talk to their coworkers. And so we're not the people you work with, we're not your elders, we're just the neutral listeners who understand your life. We get exactly what your life looks like. And so we can just really help them process what they're going through. And it's done by maintaining a high-touch connection. And again, you know, in 27 years under MSC, if I ever heard from them, it was to fill out this form or answer this question, an administrative thing, and that might have been, you know, a dozen times in 27 years. So what we wanted to do was create an environment for our workers where they know we're keeping an eye on them. We understand what's going on. They're hearing from us on a regular basis. Hi, how's it going? Anything we can help you with? You know, how you're feeling about the new ministry you started. Sometimes it's responding to a newsletter. And that can be done anyway. Primarily it was through email. And we would often, like for instance, Marilyn does a lot of ours for Africa. We get a situation where we're just praising the Lord that Bob can be out in the villages 3 weeks a month ministering the gospel, right? Marilyn would write back saying, "Sounds to me like you're lonely." Yeah. So something like that. Just understanding what's really going on there, because sometimes you've really got to read between the lines in newsletters. And sometimes we get a response right back saying, "Oh yeah, you know, it's great. We're praising the Lord for the opportunities, but the kids and I are really, really struggling here." Sometimes you hear nothing. And let's face it, some missionaries out there, they're just not interested in dealing on that level. So there's no obligation, there's no push. We get enough to do when we hear back from the people who want to engage us. So we just throw it out there, and whoever comes back, that's who we stay with. So that's how we prioritize it. All workers are routinely contacted, but where'd that come from? But new workers are prioritized. The ones who are in the field, just try to walk through the journey with them. How's it going? What are you facing? What surprised you the most? Did you see something today you've never seen before? All of those kinds of questions help them get out and process what they're going through and what they're dealing with. And workers who respond then, we engage. So it's all up to them. And they're told this before they go. We're here for you as much or as little as you want. And we got plenty of work to do, so we're not looking, you know, if you're not interested. Obviously, workers in crisis. As soon as we see something in a newsletter or hear something in a direct email, then we respond to that. If there was any kind of illness or particular problem, someone's been in an accident or whatever, get in touch then. Single workers we keep a special eye on too, because they often don't have the sort of minute-to-minute, day-by-day debriefing to each other of what they've experienced and what's going on. And so we got to take special care to make sure they have something. We've really ramped up, especially even in the last year, our whole reentry resettlement thing. And a lot of folks don't begin to think about how difficult it is for someone who's lived abroad for 20 or 30 years to come back into their so-called home culture. It's statistically, and in my personal experience, and in our worker care experience, it's actually a greater cross-cultural adaptation than going out was. What happens is they go out to the field, they know they're going to a foreign culture, and they take some studies, read some books, hopefully. We've had too many over the years just get on a plane and go and learn everything the hard way, but we're stopping that a lot with some, just a bit of pre-field training. But the workers coming home, they have this sense of coming home, but they've changed so drastically in their time living in another culture, they don't even see it. How they process life, how they think, these things change when you live out in a place like Zimbabwe or Pakistan or wherever. And in the meantime, society here has moved on at a lightning pace. And the divergence that's happened over the time you've been away, and then you come home and people aren't you so glad to be home. And in actual fact, you're missing a lot of things that you'd gotten quite used to over there. And there's nobody to talk about that with. There's no one to process and tell that to. And especially the more people are expecting you to just slot right back in when you left and without skipping a beat. And some folks really struggle. They often won't let it show. They often won't talk about it. It's a very, very common thing. We've prepared a bunch of material that the worker gets before they actually travel, that they get when they arrive, that we send to the local church before the worker arrives home, gives them a little checklist of things to think about and do, things to do in preparation, things to do to help the family re-enter. And we've prepared that package, which all gets sent out. I think I have till 3 o'clock. So how am I doing? Not too good. I noticed that, brother. I didn't point it out. But,
I'm just giving you that.
We don't promise the workers anything. We don't obligate them to respond. We don't give advice. We don't answer administration questions. We just refer them to the office. And we don't answer things we're not sure about. These are the rules of our worker care team. We're not there to be the office. We're not there to talk about, when's the next check coming out or something like that. But what we do is we listen, we empathize, we affirm, encourage, partner with them, and pass on any information that might be significant. So this whole idea of just being a safe person to listen to. 85% of mission workers return prematurely from the field do so because of interpersonal conflict with other missionaries. Now, that can be very shocking to ordinary mission supporters. 85%. I don't know where I got that stat, but I believe it from my own personal experience. And it was shocking to hear it was that high, but it wasn't surprising. I would have thought at least 2/3 for sure. That's the most difficult thing. Ministering to the people out there is the easy part. Getting along with the other missionaries can be quite difficult. And when you're the type of person who sells the house, quits the job, moves the family to Timbuktu, you're probably a type A kind of person who's on a mission. And it's not always easy to work with those folks. And we love to help that. So we also like to help them particularly, I'm just going to get through some of our training here. I was going to show you a little bit about how we train our staff. But one of the biggest things is trying to sense where their discouragement meter is. How discouraged are they? We really just need a little bit of encouragement sometime. And you can have a whole pile of things happen to you in quick order. The death rate in some of these countries is horrific. We've had so many good friends in Zimbabwe die. I mean, it's amazing. Every time we go back, there's people and we're hearing about it on WhatsApp all the time now, years after we were there. It's really tragic. And you can get discouraged, and then the others who go off the rails spiritually are devastating. People that you poured your life into and discipled, and they just crash and burn, and it's just devastating. And these discouragements pile up, and one little phone call and one little chat can overcome so much of that. It's really amazing just to have someone say, hey, that must be devastating, what happened. I can see that. You really sound down. Just that somebody's willing to say the truth and talk about that can be so encouraging. Another scenario is the missionary life cycle. You know, there's these statistical points at which missionaries come home, 18 months, 4 years, and 10 years. And they're very predictable, and there's a good reason why those points are, and I don't have time to unpack that today. But sometimes we get a missionary who seems very discouraged, and you know, Phil, I think it's time for us to come home and just maybe get back into secular work and get the kids back into high school. You say, okay, how long they've been out there? 4 years. Okay. So you can spit back to them things like, so you're feeling this, and this, and this, and this has happened, and this has happened, and this has happened. And they go, how do you know? Do you have a microphone in our house? You say, no, it's pretty common. And they go, really? You go, yeah, you're not crazy. You're not losing your salvation. You're fine. You know, the Lord's with you. He's calling you. These are the way you're supposed to feel after 4 years. Oh. And that little thing can maybe keep them on the field. If they've been out there for, you know, think about the money, 30, 40,000 pounds a year to keep them out there, a family of 4, and all that plane fare back and forth, all the money in preparation, buy a vehicle, all this stuff, you know, over 4 years, it could be almost 200,000 pounds gone into this venture of them being there. And if we can even hop on a plane for 500 pounds or 1,000 pounds and go and just spend a couple of days with them, that's a great investment. Because all of this has all been poured in. They're just getting ready to be effective. Just getting ready to actually do something after 4 years. Understand the culture, learn a bit of the language, starting to feel at home. And if we can do a few little things to encourage discouraged workers, that is the best investment financially you could ever make, let alone spiritually and emotionally.
We hope you're encouraged and inspired and ready to answer the call. Thank you for listening.